That makes sense. That brings up that's a perfect transition. Someone had a question about balancing. Were they aware of the perfect balance they achieved in Age of Empires 2, or did they just throw a bunch of rock, paper, scissors systems that make historical sense and expect it to work out?
Okay, so he's making me cry because I spent 2 years of my life trying super hard every single day, spending hours trying to make that thing balanced.
Right.
So I would like to believe it was not randomly done.
Right. All right, that answers that perfectly.
I did base it on various books such as Archer Jones' Theory of War book, where I learned the basic interaction of medieval units, or ancient units, which is that light infantry, ranged infantry beat melee infantry, ranged cavalry beat melee cavalry beat ranged infantry, because you charge them with your knights and they can shoot a few arrows when you crash into them, and heavy infantry or melee infantry beat melee cavalry. So then we had this interrelationship that was asymmetrical, and then we added the counter units.
Yeah, it's a very good system. Yeah, no, it's exceptional.
So that was how it worked, and that was the basis of it. And then we were balancing. Now balancing also was it was a constant struggle because the balancing team was like a small elite team consisting of like me and the sheriff basically, and we had to fight everything too because a lot of people, even in the company, they have a fight, they lose, and since obviously it wasn't their fault that they lost, the game must be blamed.
Oh, right, yeah. That must be very tough when you have so many different opinions about balancing, and then you kind of have to be the moderator in so many voices and opinions, right?
Yeah, but I can't go in there and say, well, I mean, you sucked at playing, and that's why you lost.
Right.
Because then they get mad, they don't pay attention. So, like, we had one guy that built a whole bunch of longbowmen, and then he said, they're worthless. I got killed by cannons. And I cannons are supposed to kill longbows, right? I mean, that's what happened historically. That's why the British lost the 100 Years' War.
Right.
You know, if there's one thing that kills archers, it's bursting cannonballs in the middle.
Sure, yeah.
They don't have armor. So I just said, oh, well, I'll look at that, you know. Or another guy came and said, well, here's one of my great balancing stories. This was against another designer who should have known better. We do have things called grenadiers in Age of Empires, who are guys that run up and throw grenades that blow up. Okay, and they're good against certain kinds of units. Like they're pretty good against archers because the explosions are always good. They're good against buildings. So this guy was like, these grenadiers are no good. I made them and they got killed by a bunch of guys that are the counter to them. Okay.
Okay.
And I said, well, we'll go in there and we'll fix them. So we went back to our office and we talked about some movie we'd seen for half an hour. And the sheriff and me, we came back and said, okay, they're fixed, ready to go. And he played and said, wow, they're great. Good job, Sandy. So now we didn't always prank him like that. Sometimes they would sometimes have legit problems that we had to fix.
Right, of course. There's a fine line, right?
So here's the other thing. So here's kind of what stung me to work super hard and compulsively on the Age of Empire 2 balance. At the very end of Age of Empires 1, one of the things we did with Rise of Rome is we rebalanced some of the units for Age of Empires 1. So one of the civilizations was the Shang, and the Shang thing was that their villagers cost 35 food instead of 50 food. And everyone thought the Shang were unbalanced. That was too good. Okay? So, I mean, they're the Chinese to get more villagers. So they said, should we fix it? So I thought about, and I had two warring game balance ideas in my mind. Because it was all came down to me for some reason. I don't know why. We didn't have the sheriff yet. Maybe that's why. And so on the one hand, making crappy small distinctions isn't fun.
Sure.
Having a unit that has one more point is boring, right? You want to have a big distinction. And on the other hand, we want it to be balanced. So should I make them cost 40 or 45 food instead of 50? That's kind of not exciting. Or should I, right? And so in the end, I made the choice of we'll leave it at 35 and that'll be how it is. And then immediately after that, we went and had a big contest in the Dragon's Lair in Seattle. That's where that's where I met Richard Garfield.
Cool. Right?
Turned out he loved my game Call of Cthulhu, so we nerded out with each other for a while.
Awesome.
I like Magic the Gathering, so we had the four top players in the whole country come and play Age of Empires, and they all picked Shang. I said, no. One of them even teased me. He said, oh, maybe I'll be Greek. Nah, Shang. So I had blown it. I said, never again. But here's the case where I made the right decision. So we're playing with the Huns, and the Hun thing in
the houses.
The houses. That was the thing. They didn't have to pay for their houses, which is of course a huge advantage. So everyone whined that this is too big an advantage for the Huns, and we did other things to fix it. We said, oh, we'll make this thing worse about them, make that thing worse. But I said we're not going to change the house thing because that's
who they are. That's their identity.
And then finally they said, but then what happened is that the newest build of the game broke. Okay, so that you still had to build the houses for the Huns. It just cost 0.
Interesting.
But you had to build it.
Interesting.
Okay, and the players who had been complaining about how the houses had to cost something, that sucked so much. I said, look, the houses are free. Isn't that what you wanted? And they were like, oh my gosh, that's the worst. And they never complained again about the free house. They said, no. Okay. And there's so much. It says, leave it like it is. Because they all spent the whole game being housed, if you know what that is.
Yeah, of course.
They were housed every second because they sucked so bad.
It's unfortunate you didn't have analytics like that we do today. Today we have analytics, win rates, a billion different games. You didn't have that, right?
No, we had win rates. We had computers that would follow 100 different games and stuff. We didn't play, right? But we didn't have, our AI wasn't able to play against itself effectively. It wouldn't give us a real answer. Like the AI was really good at micro. So like if you gave the AI a bunch of horse archers, it was great until lag hit, right? But the AI was terrible at picking what units to build.
When you said micro, does that mean you still follow a little bit the scene or no? Because like that's kind of the current meta, micro, walling, that kind of stuff. Do you follow the scene at all?
I follow it a little bit, not a lot. I mean, I'll show up and I'll look at the YouTube channels that talk about the old Age of Empire stuff, and sometimes I'll make comments, and someone will attack something I did, and I will.
You'll be in there defending yourself 10 years later.
Whatever, it's like